Welcome back to Coates in Conversation. I'm your host, Kendrick Coates. In today's conversation, I speak with John Mark Charles, who is a cognitive performance specialist for Air Force pilots. From John Mark, I learned how intense the training for pilots can be and about the tolls it can take on their mental health. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, and don't forget to like and subscribe. John Mark, how are you doing today?
Doing great. How you doing, Kendrick?
Man, I can't complain. I want to thank you for taking the time on jumping on Coats in Conversation. I think that this episode in this conversation is going to be fascinating, giving your background of formerly being an athlete in college, and so definitely looking forward to it. So we're just going to jump right into things. As a former college football athlete turned sports performance psychologist in the military, how did this journey unfold, and what made you want to become a sports performance psychologist?
Great question. It all started 1994, Miami, Florida. No, I'm kidding. So played football in high school. Got recruited by Western Illinois University. Shout out Leathernex. They're in Macomb, Illinois, 3.5 hours southwest of Chicago, and that's where I spent my undergraduate and graduate school years there. But what happened that got me into sport performance psychology was I ruptured my quadriceps tendon in my right knee. Have a beautiful 8-inch scar with 37 staples in it. And when that happened, my athletic trainer told me, "Hey, do you want to go see a sports psychologist for this injury?" And I thought to myself at the time, "Nah, I'm good. I get hurt. I've been hurt before. I go through surgery. I heal. I come back a year later. I have a red shirt. I'll be fine." And he says, "Well, this is a pretty bad injury. You might come back and play, but we have to plan for other things." 19, 18-year-old or 20-year-old Jean Marc didn't want to hear anything about not playing football ever again. But I still went, talked to the sport performance psychologist. And the first part of what was so enlightening about that was all the concepts and theories he was talking to me about, all the self reflection we were doing, things like how my emotions impact my thought process, how does my sleep quality impact how I think about the rest of the day, my sleep hygiene, things of that nature, how I can slow myself down and communicate better, how that impacted the way I was handling the injury. And then after a couple of months of talking to him, he tried to convince me, saying, "John Mark, you've gotten up to these concepts pretty well. You're not playing football right now, but you can go to grad school for sport performance psychology. I think it'd be really great for the program." Looking back at it now, the program is pretty short in terms of we don't have a lot of individuals in grad school for sport performance psychology. But back then, when he told me 2 more years of college, I said, "Nah, that's not gonna happen." Somewhere along the lines, he got me to write a thesis. He got me to present the thesis, and now I'm here 6 years, 7 years later, talking to you about my job as a performance sports psychologist with the Air Force. So he was right. I was good for it, I think. But that journey unfolded with the help of a university professor, which right now I'm so upset because his name is just passing me by. And I can't remember it, but it was him that got me into the program and got me to where I'm at now.
Man, it's crazy how our lives just kind of evolve and different career paths. You'd mentioned like doing this and you doing that, and thesis, grad school, and now this. And was this something ever in your vision when you were a young kid? Did you even know about this type of field or this type of work?
No, fun fact about John Mark, he was a terrible I was terrible academically, period. I mean, high school, middle school, college, undergrad, school wasn't my thing. So I didn't even know I didn't know what a major was until I got to college campus, like 3 weeks after I turned 18 years old. I was like, I have to choose a major. What's a major? They're like, it's this thing for the rest of your life. I'm like, rest of my life. I don't know what I'm eating tomorrow. I don't know what y'all talking about. But in terms of performance and sports psychology, no, no idea. I've always actually had like a mild fear of getting into psychology in the first place because of all the psychological thrillers I used to watch as a kid. Like, I don't want to end up being one of those guys, and I figured psychology would put me there. But working with the military, being in the field that's with cognitive performance and cognitive enhancement, being a very, I guess, being a key point person that people wants to be vulnerable with is not a position I thought I would be. Even when I was in college, even pro football wasn't something I thought I was going to be, but I definitely thought I was going to be somewhere in athletics, whether it's going to be coaching, football, strength and conditioning type of thing, maybe just fitness and health in general. But this avenue or this path I'm on the past 4 or 5 years, it's still, I think I'm good at it. I think I'm doing well at it, but it's still something where I wake up every day and I'm just thinking, I can't believe I'm actually doing this as a job.
So it sounds like you are in a field that you know brings you excitement, brings you joy. There's always, the flip side of the work as well. And so,
Mhm.
mental health in the military seems like a topic that is gaining more attention than before, and rightfully so. I mean, you've got folks that are fighting for our country and making sure that we're giving them the right tools necessary for mental health is important. So can you give us some insight into the unique challenges you encounter when working with military personnel?
Yeah. To start off, I'd have to say this for sure because if any of my colleagues or like anyone else hears this, I am not in the field of mental health, unfortunately. I wish I was smart enough to get the kind of money. Um, it's even kind of inaccurate to call me a sport performance psychologist because psychologists have PhDs. I just have a master's, but my appropriate term for work is actually a cognitive performance specialist, a CPS. Not that CPS, this CPS. But yeah, as a cognitive performance specialist, there's still some conversations and things you hear in the grapevine in regard to mental health. I mentioned earlier that I worked with the Air Force, but I'm going to pull back on a lot of anecdotal stuff from when I was working with the Army from 2019 to 2023. And even back then, so 4 years ago, the biggest challenges when it came to mental health was pretty much the culture of the military itself. This NCO, non-commissioned officer, was telling my coworkers a story of how he noticed one of his Joes motorcycle was in the parking lot of the behavioral health office, and the next day he was removed from the ongoing mission to not deploy, but to go out to a field training mission where they were going to have live ammunitions, their tanking vehicles, and also be exposed to the elements for a week at a time. Just because they saw his motorcycle parked out there, they automatically jumped to the conclusion of he's unstable, he wants to harm himself, he might be a danger to other people, so they removed him from the mission. So that was the beginning phases, and you'd have to assume further back, even you could probably see this person like when it comes to mental health and being a man, it doesn't 100% co-mingle, especially back in the day. Now it's starting to, thank God. But yeah, the biggest challenge I'd have to say would be the culture of the military itself and how they want to avoid that talk of mental health or mental illness or people not feeling the appropriate way to get their job done. But within recent times, I mean, I left Fort Bliss, Texas at in 2023. So I started seeing some shift of hiring more behavioral health specialists, seeing more psychologists actually walking through the halls and talking to the soldiers and the Joes and getting to know them, trying to invite them to have those kind of conversations. And then going into the military or going to the Air Force, we have some conversations about vulnerability, being able to understand that work life balance or that quality of life and how important it is to not only your piloting experience, but also how can your mental health impact your ability to be a better pilot. And the biggest difference with Air Force and Army is that with the Air Force, especially working with pilots, those who are in the UPT, undergraduate pilot training course, they want to be pilots. So they want to eliminate any and all barriers that can stop them from being a pilot. So if they understand that they have some mental health discrepancies or anything that's going to stop them on the mental side, they have the cognitive performance specialists, but they also have aviation psychologists and they also have a chaplain, they also have behavioral health on base where they can go and talk to, and they have gone and talked to them to utilize that resource to make sure that they can mitigate, decrease, and handle that problem as much as possible so they can get back into the cockpit and keep flying.
So it sounds like the area that you work in, there's more of like a holistic approach for pilots to get the specific resources or tools they need to perform at a
Mhm.
high level?
Oh, yeah, for sure. The team I'm part of is called CRAFT, Comprehensive Readiness for Aircrew Flying Team. And on that team, there's cognitive performance specialists. So me and other individuals who have degrees in performance psychology who understand the theories of critical thinking, how to apply mindfulness, deliberate breathing, and other patterns of thinking that can help with understanding how to perform better at your job. We have strength and conditioning coaches that help build more robust and stronger bodies because I don't know if you've ever been in a jet, pulled a G before, but when you start pulling 6 or 7 Gs, take your body weight, multiply by six, that's how much force is being exerted on your body. The strength and conditioning coaches are there to make sure that those pilots can build muscles and tissues that can handle that type of existential force. And then we have performance dietitians, individuals that are keen and educated on how to hydrate, how to eat well, how to manage your food in case you get air sickness, how to manage your hydration in case you start suffering from hallucinations, and also how to keep your brain and your body functioning when we do build up those skills through the demands of food and supplementation through food as well. So our team is a human performance team and is definitely heavy on the holistic but also evidence-based approach of improving your body, your mind, and what you put into your body as much as possible.
You said hallucinations, and I'd like to kind of unpack that a little bit just
Sure.
for my
Yeah.
own knowledge, but also
Yeah.
some of our viewers and listeners. So walk us through kind of why a pilot may hallucinate or, just yeah, give us the rundown of how that even works and what causes it.
Cool. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. You ready? When a fetus is forming, what element is it sitting in?
Water
Water,
or
right?
fluid.
When water amniotic fluid, it is a liquid. We'll say that. When human beings are walking around, crawling, developing, what element are they most in contact with?
Their environment, furniture, parents,
Gravity, furniture, parents, the earth,
the
right?
earth,
Like
yeah,
we're always in the ground. If we jump up, what happens to us?
come down.
We come back down. What creature, or like, what are some features do you think creatures need to be in the air in the sky?
Birds, flying, air, they need all those
Yeah, but
things.
they need wings, right?
Wings, yeah.
Humans don't possess wings. Humans are not meant to fly. So when you expose a human being to altitude, G forces, and also the different ocular sense or the ocular presence of being in the air, hallucinations occur because your inner ear system, the inner water ear system, completely goes out of whack. It doesn't know what's happening because you go to thinner air, gravity is a little bit less, and then the sun is a little bit closer, so that causes a bend in how things refract and reflect light. So a lot of the times, pilots will start to notice that they'll see spirals, they'll see dashes of light, they'll feel like they're upside down or they're actually right side up, or if they bank too long at a 45 or 90-degree angle and they come to, their vision will still show that 90-degree angle. Now, on top of being outside of your natural element flying, because humans are not meant to fly, even though we have a great kick-ass Air Force flying team, humans also, when they dehydrate, when they start getting stressed out, and when they start are also a little bit physically unfit, those are three factors that can also lead to hallucinations because the brain is suffering the tax on the body, and the tax on the body is exponential when it comes to the brain, which is also being taxed because I don't know if you've ever seen the inside of a cockpit. There is a giant screen and 1,000 buttons and more screens that you have to pay attention to and make sure that they're all even and ready to go so you can keep your plane from crashing out of the sky.
Wow. I feel like I just got a crash course in, like, some physics class. Because there
Every
just
pilots.
seems like there's so many different elements that play into actually being a pilot that I didn't know about. And when
Mhm.
you were telling me about how you mentioned something, and the first thing I thought about was vertigo. Is there like an element of that something similar to vertigo that people experience?
Yeah, so if I remember correctly, vertigo is the inability to remain balanced while standing still, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, that 100% happens in the cockpit. I don't think it's called vertigo in the cockpit. I have to ask one of the aviation psychologists or the aerospace physiologists. They'll definitely know what term it is. But what happens is that the body's orientation and the brain's thought process doesn't match. So imagine that you're looking straight forward at the camera, you see a horizontal picture, but your body feels like that your butt is facing this way, like 190 degrees straight to the left, to the right. That happens in the cockpit because the body and brain start to go through so much stress and so much movements that it takes a while for it to reconnect and hit the homeostasis to feel balanced again. So that definitely happens to pilots as well. They get used to it and it happens less, but your first time getting in the cockpit, your first time pulling G's in a fighter jet, it can really mess with your central nervous system.
Mm. So what's the recovery process once your nervous system is taxed like that? What's generally the recovery process for a pilot?
Well, first thing, after they get out of the jet, hydrating with carbs and electrolytes. Our dietitians are always pumping those two things, like get your carbs, get your electrolytes in. It just helps with decreasing that mental fatigue. Aside from that, sleep. I mean, we tell our pilots every day, get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Sometimes if you can't get 10 because you're going through a lot of mental stress. There's a lot of schoolwork, there's a lot of mental work in terms of flying, and there's a lot of physical work in terms of flying. You could be a mobility pilot, and that means your sorties can go from 1 hour to 6 hours in a mission. You can be a fighter pilot, and your sorties are going to be from like 30 minutes to an hour, but you might double turn, triple turn, quadruple turn, so fly one, two, three, or four times in a day. And they have to be able to physically recover and mentally recover. And one of the best ways to do that is to get your sleep. Most humans don't sleep as well, and there's actually a study that came out a couple of days ago, or I read a couple of days ago, that human beings now are sleeping 3 to 4 hours less than what we did in the 40s, and we're looking 20 to 30 years older in our 20s.
Mm.
There's a big correlation there, but yeah, sleep and hydration, and also being able to keep a physically robust and stronger body, which is why our strength coaches are so important. Also helps with increasing that recovery time. Like the stronger you are, the more physically fit you are, the less taxing flying can be on your body.
I'm seriously mind blown. There's just I didn't expect to ask these questions, but I was like, I can't we can't move on with this podcast until you answer some of these questions because when you said hit a G, turn in a plane, hallucinations, I was like, hold up. I'm kind of intrigued. What's going on here? But
Flying is really cool. Flying is really cool. It's scary as hell, but it's an awesome thing.
yeah, you mentioned sleep as well, and I was rereading a book. It's called Sleep Revolution by Ariana Huffington,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of concepts in there about the importance of sleep on cognitive functioning. And so, as a society, yes, we do not get enough sleep. And so, when you say we're looking 20, 30, 40 years older than what we are, I believe it because I see some people that are in their 20s. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Like this
Mhm.
person looks like, so it's very important that, sleep plays into all facets of our life. I'm kind of curious, how have many of your experiences as a former athlete played into your approach in training and coaching any of the pilots or personnel that you work with?
Um, I, to be honest, the biggest thing that I've taken from my athletic career is just my ability of building good and healthy relationships. I was always trying to be the team player, but I've always had this. I don't know if it's an affinity. My mom says it is, but being able to like talk to multiple different people and find some kind of common ground and then maximize that common ground. And by all means, not saying that I was best friends with all 103 people on my football team, but there was at least a point in time where I knew a detail about them that I cared enough about to talk to them, catch up on it, and utilize, like, make sure I can still be an effective person to them. I say that also to say that I have proudly left a lot of my football days behind me. Um, Not that I hate it or just disgust it, but I'm also an anti-believer in college are the best years of your life. If college are the best years of your life, I'm sorry, you're not doing enough now. So
That's
for
true.
anybody who thinks that college is the best years of your life, find a hobby. Um, but yeah, I think my ability of building healthy relationships and being a personable, social person helps with my job because a lot of the time we have theories. We also have a lot of cognitive. technology we utilize, but I think my bread and butter comes from my ability to listen to individuals tell me what is ailing them or is bothering them, and me being able to understand which theory or which piece of information I have read and understood can be applied to them, and they can utilize it immediately as a way to either mitigate that problem or to solve that problem more effectively, along with some practice application, of course. But yeah, I'd say listening and then presenting them with the proper source of information, the proper type of technique or strategy to handle said problem or ailment, or even multiply a success that they've had, how to keep them doing the right thing over and over again, creating those win streaks. I think that's one of the greater things I pulled from my football experience to my professional life.
I'd imagine too, working with folks in the military, there's this element of um, maybe reservation or hesitation to work with somebody that is directly maybe impacting their thought process or their cognitive functioning. Do you find that there are any initial barriers, or is it more of an open mindedness to learn more about themselves and how to perform at a higher level?
That is a 50-50 answer one, and I say 50-50 because there are some pilots who are very, very open to the cognitive performance stuff, and there are also some pilots who say, "This is bullshit. Why are we talking about feelings and thoughts?" So there is both a want and also a pushback against. What I've seen, which is kind of a cool thing, a lot of pilots whose parents have been pilots or whose parents have been in the military usually are the ones who are more apt towards talking about their thought process, how their emotions can help or get in the way of the performances, and others just sometimes just don't think that they need value in it as well. But even with the individuals that don't see value, sometimes it's more or less of do they actually care to know, or are they just checking the block type of thing? Checking the block is a term used in the military to literally just, all right, we did it, let's get the hell out of here, versus am I delivering a quality service to this person? Are they actually believing I'm delivering that quality service? And once that is shown, and once they see that I actually care, or I actually pay attention to what they're talking about, or I'm actually trying with effort to help them out, that barrier tends to thin and go down a little bit more. And that's when they start to buy in as well. But with that being said, not every pilot buys into cognitive performance.
Mhm. That reminds me of the buy-in. There was another I like to reference books sometimes, but there's
Mhm.
another book that is by Brett Bartholomew. It's called Conscious Coaching, and he goes through just the different archetypes of athletes. And to me, when you're talking about the personnel that you work with, it sounds like y'all have a just a whole team of performance specialists to
Mhm.
help the athlete, which is the military individual. When you're dealing with these individuals, they are athletes. They are performing some of the most dangerous things that most human beings will never be able
Yep.
to go through. And so with that, I know we kind of talked about, the recovery process and the cognitive portion, but, the other piece you mentioned as far as how important it is to build relationships, and in marriage and family therapy, that's all we talk about is the relationships are everything. And so with that, are there specific tools? Not necessarily, I'm not asking you to dive into like some of the top secret stuff, but are there just general tools that you give to some of the pilots that help them kind of uh, control their emotions or emotionally regulate themselves when there is an event that is high stress? The reason why I ask that is, I think it in this episode, I want some people who are listening or watching to be able to take something away that they can, start doing today or tomorrow, next week, when
Yep.
it comes to regulating their own emotions.
Mhm. So there's two things I can definitely discuss right now about how to increase that regulation. The first thing is because you asked a really great question about during a stressful time. Whether you're a mobility pilot or a fighter pilot, being in the cockpit will be stressful. Whether it's an approach, takeoff, formation flying, where you're flying 10 feet away, tip to tip, wing tip, and like make sure you maintain that. Sometimes you're going to lose yourself in that moment. So a lot of the time, what we talk about is deliberate breathing or box breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, whatever you want to call it, but being able to consciously take time, using your nostrils, using your abdomen, and then actively creating the sensation of applying pressure to your vagus nerve at the base of your abdomen and causing that parasympathetic nervous system response to activate on purpose. That's like the first thing we talk about. And to go through that, what I cue my my cue my pilots to do is to when they're experiencing that stress to shut their mouth, gently stick their tongue to the roof of their mouth, and with their nostrils, imagine a cool stream of blue air or blue line going into their nostrils, hitting the back of their throat, the back of their head, going down the back of their neck, passing their chest, and then becoming a giant ball in their stomach, a giant cool ball. And then pausing for a second, holding that breath, transforming that into a warm ball, and then reversing the sensation of pushing it out through the chest, through the neck, back of the throat, back of the head, out the nostrils. And what I have noticed acutely with that is they tend to drop their eyes, they get really relaxed in their shoulders. Fun fact about flying, even though you are moving this giant ass plane at a couple hundred miles per hour, you don't hold the throttle like this. You hold it like this. What's a better example? I'll use my QZ. You would hold it gently like this versus trying to squeeze it tight. So when they experience that physiological release of stress and anxiousness, their grip becomes looser and then their movements become more smooth and fine. Another thing that helps with regulation, this is more of a distraction technique, is to ask them to ask themselves a question of what's important now. Being able to recognize that in an hour sortie, 60 minutes, you probably have 75 different targets. How can you operate well each and single different target without worrying about the last one or without even trying to hype yourself up on a past success? So being very, very stuck in the moment of what's important now, what's my next mission, what's important now, what's my next mission, being able to shorten that bandwidth of past thought, future thought, and remaining in that present thought as well is another way we help increasing that self-regulation and maintaining focus during that stressful time.
Just tried that breathing technique as you were explaining. I almost fell asleep.
Yep,
Just playing.
it's a
What I felt though is the back of my neck kind of
Mhm.
release, and because I'm just from football and all the contact sport, my neck is just tighter than
Crushed.
I don't know what. Yeah, and so, when you were walking through the breathing technique, the cool ball, the streams coming in the nostrils, going down, and then releasing it as a warm ball, I immediately felt everything just release up here. So
Mhm.
viewers, listeners, I just tried it and it worked. And I never really thought of it that way. Some of the things that I've done, Wim Hof. Are you familiar with
Yeah.
Wim Hof? That's kind of unique. But it's cool to hear that you are giving tools in high stress situations. Now, again, I want to go back to you said that the throttle you're kind of holding it like this,
Yep.
and is that because when we get in more stressful situations, our automatic response is to squeeze?
Yeah, for sure. When we do suffer stress or when we, experience that fight or flight response, which is mainly my entire job, honestly, is to help maximize the fight or flight response or to maximize the rest and digest response so you can use either or appropriately. If you're in a gunfight, yeah, you probably want to squeeze your gun really tight and shoot someone as soon as possible. But if you're a medic and you need to make sure you can pull someone to safety, you might want to rest and digest, pick up as much information about the field that you're in, notice where the danger zones are at, and then pull the person to safety. But yeah, when it comes to experiencing that fight or flight response, initially that constant tension, and it's not just the hand, every muscle in the body tends to do that. It's just it becomes more focused depending on which body part is very important. It's the same thing when individuals are seeing or about to get into a car accident, they perceive a car accident. What do you usually do when you think you're about to get into a car accident?
Tense up.
Yeah, you tense up. You also lock your arms on your steering wheel, right?
Hmm.
Is because your arms do a lot of the work when you're driving. And the same thing with it comes to operating a aircraft. You have the throttle, or you have the stick, and you have the PCL on the side. What tends to happen is that they grip it really tight because they want to maintain control. But the best way of maintaining control is to allow yourself to have more smooth, fluid movements versus clunky, rigid movements.
Man, these are pure athletes. One percenters is it what it sounds like.
Yes. We actually call them tactical athletes, and they always laugh when we say that, but we are being completely serious. The military has now, in the past 11, 12 years, have now taken a emphasis on understanding that pilots are getting hurt a lot, or not pilots, service members in the military are getting hurt a lot. They're leaving with busted up joints, a lot of musculoskeletal injuries, a lot of soft tissue problems, a lot of chronic issues as well. And their overall health isn't where they would like it to be. I mean, the amount of soldiers I know that have left the army with chronic diseases because a lot of them are young high school kids who either play sports or didn't play sports and think that their young bodies are going to survive all those years of damage and battle and all these extra trainings. Whereas in reality, when you're getting beat up carrying 90 pounds of stuff with you all the way around the world, you're always out exposed to the elements and the harsh conditions. And sometimes you have to sacrifice sleep to maintain the safety of the area that you're in. You're going to age, you're going to get hurt, you're going to suffer. The military has seen that. They at first responded with, "Oh, well, that's how it is." But now they realize that if someone in the NFL, which the average career in the NFL is 3.25 years, if someone can play 11, 15, 20 years in the NFL, they can probably figure out why. And one of the reasons why is because they recover well. They take care of their bodies, they take care of their minds, they do a good job investing into themselves during those times of play. So when they get out, they're not as banged up or not as beat up. The military is doing the same thing now. They're trying to invest money into these individuals who have either worked with high performers or want to work with high performers and want to keep them healthy as long as possible. That's what they're investing into. So they are definitely one percenters. Technically speaking, if we're talking about just the Air Force, there are 2,500 total Air Force pilots. And you'll have about 4 to 500 scattered through undergraduates, so they don't have their wings yet. But I mean, that's less than 0.3%
Mhm.
of the American population. And in total of the all the branches of military, 25,000 maybe that operate with big planes, fast planes, helicopters, even small medic planes. Maybe again less than 1% in total of the service members compared to the U.S. population. So yeah, it is, as Kodak Black says, an elite division.
Yeah, Kodak, young Kodak. Man, that's fascinating, and I could ask 125 more questions about that, but obviously, we
We got
don't wanna
time.
have a three-hour podcast. So, with all of that being said, I know that you are in spaces, working with, military personnel that have high stress positions. They're doing high stress work. I'm curious to know, kind of going on the personal side of things, how do you, as someone who guides others through mental challenges, take care of your own mind?
Hmm, that's a great, great question. Here's Odin. He is my comfort animal. I take him for 30-minute walks every single day, and during those walks, I don't think about work. I leave work at home at work as much as possible, so I try to have that work-life balance per se. So Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday, depending, between 8 to 4 or 5 p.m. I do my best to be the best college and performance specialist that I can be for the Air Force, and I try to help my teammates as much as possible, try to help the pilots as much as possible. But just as the pilots who need those 12 hours of crew rest time to be with their families, to not think about being a pilot, I try to take advantage of my John Mark time, going to the gym. I like to lift weights as well. I like to sometimes do cardio for health, whatever. But spending time with my dog, reading a book. I'm a huge fantasy book reader, so I enjoy that a lot. Just finished reading the Legendborn series with Bloodmark by Tracy Dion. That was pretty good. I like to watch animes and read mangas as well. I too just entertain my mind with things that aren't work related. But above else from that, I still also get good sleep. I aim for the 7 to 9 hours. Um, and I enjoy taking time to myself. So even when my friends want to hang out or they want to be social, sometimes I enjoy just putting my phone down, going out, touching grass, and just relaxing, just avoiding everything and just letting the world come and go through my mind and just being in existence for a little bit.
That's, when you were talking about that as far as going out with friends and whatnot, Um, you know, it sounds like you have boundaries on what you do for work and what you do as a person, and they don't merge. You keep them
Mhm.
separate, which is so important because I think that sometimes in the fields that we are in, we can be so passionate about our work that it overtakes our personal lives, and then we become workaholics. And I
Mhm.
think I see that a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it too from time to time, to being too much in the work and not focusing on myself. And so, and then you have your dog as well.
Mhm.
um there's beauty in just going on 10, 15, 20 minute, 30-minute walks and just getting in tune with nature. Because if you think about it, way back when we didn't have homes, these plush homes and beds to
Yeah,
sleep
yeah,
in,
yeah.
we were roaming the lands. And so
Mhm.
just kind of going back to touching grass, like you said, grounding yourself. So I'm glad that you've been able to find balance in the work that you're passionate in, but then also finding time and importance in pouring into yourself as well. I do want to ask one question. You'd mentioned your own journey with mental health
Yeah.
over the past year. Can you kind of dive into that a little bit and just kind of share with us what that experience has been like?
It's like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to men and mental health, it doesn't commingle. And then even be more specific, although this could be anecdotal, when it comes to being a black man and mental health, that doesn't commingle at all. But I'll tell you, at 6'3", 280 pounds, large black male, go to therapy. Um, I went through a pretty distraughting breakup with one of my partners about 5 months ago. And the breakup wasn't actually the bad thing. The breakup was probably part of the process. It was the courses of action prior to the breakup that were also results of like things from my childhood that I just thought were normal. But it came to the point where I was having a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of self reflection, a lot of nightmares as well. Of like, what was I doing? What was I thinking? And for all those who are believers in Christ or believers are a higher power, this could have been a message from the universe saying, "Hey, you need to figure out a way to fix this out." So I decided to bite the bullet and use BetterHelp for therapy because finding therapy in person in El Paso was actually significantly difficult. But I found a therapist. It was great. I was trying to be and I'll be very vulnerable about this as well. I was specifically looking for a male therapist, but my therapist was male. She was a woman, but she's also been practicing in the field for 32 years. So I figured that experience means way more than anything else. So with that, I was talking with her for about, man, just about 9 months, maybe, yeah, just about 9 months. We stopped talking based on her recommendations. She said, "Hey, you've been kicking butt. You've been doing a good job. You can keep going if you want to, but right now I think you're actually good to fly and live until you think otherwise." But with that, a lot of the things that are really important when it came to my therapy sessions were increasing my ability to think about the other person's perspective, building those boundaries better because I was really poor at building boundaries 10, 11, 3 years ago. um, being able to have those boundaries, being able to think flexibly from the other person's point of view, but also understanding what do I value and what do I want was one of the biggest things. And it ebbed and flowed versus what do I want out of my partner? What do I want out of myself from my partner? What do I want out of my life? What do I want out of athletics? What do I want out of my job? And how do I get that? How do I perceive that? What are my codes and morals and ethics? A lot of that stuff I never really thought about. I mean, there are some things like I value hard work. I value respecting your adults, but like I started to realize that I was doing a lot of respecting and valuing outside of myself and not caring more for myself. And what I thought was caring for myself wasn't actually caring for myself. It was caring for what I felt like was good versus actually taking a deep look at myself and being able to how do I say, reject myself of some, whether it's an instant pleasure or something that I thought was really, really good or good, really cool or good, and being able to understand that I don't need this right now. What I do need is to be able to self reflect and understand what's more important to me in the future. But with my journey in mental health and going to therapy, a lot of it was that self reflecting piece. A lot of it was understanding who Jean-Marc is right now and if he wants to be that way in the future, or what does he have in mind for himself in the future and how does he get to that point?
Man, I just want to take the time to acknowledge everything that you said, but also, giving you your flowers of being vulnerable and sharing your experiences because, as you mentioned, as men, one, but men of color here in the United States, there's this huge stigma that mental health is not important. And
Mm,
I've been saying this lately, mental health doesn't mean that you have a problem or that, you're quote unquote crazy. Mental health can just be, creating boundaries of self-care. Mental
yeah,
health can be how you speak to yourself in the morning, noon, and night. Mental health can be, well, I'm actually going to go on walks and be mindful about who I am and be, self-reflective of what I want in life. But the last piece to that is mental health is fixing the generational traumas that we have collectively taken on that we had no control over.
mhm,
And so I just appreciate the fact that you took the step. There are probably times in your journey where you're just like, man, this really sucks. But
yep.
coming out on the other side, it's just a beautiful thing when you feel this sense of confidence that you know yourself. So as we wrap up this conversation, it's been fascinating. There's just so many questions about the work that you do. It's almost like I'm interviewing like a CIA agent, and I'm like, man, I
Oh
want to
God,
ask more.
please. I wish I was that cool. I need more.
But for other young high school or college athletes who look like us and want to pursue the same work you're doing, what advice would you give them?
Get glasses. I say that jokingly because I was a really bad student in high school. Not because I was dumb or anything like that. I just didn't realize I got to college that I was blind as hell and I couldn't see the board. And I thought everyone else saw this in the way that I did. So if you have trouble looking at the board, either sit in the front of the class or get glasses. But in all seriousness, a couple things I think for younger men, even in athletics or not, when it comes to your life in athletics, maximize whatever potential you have, maximize whatever opportunities you have. I mean, if coach asks for someone to give an extra rep, be that person. If your teammate needs help, be that person. If you are struggling with your playbook or anything like that, ask your coach for help. They're there to help you. If they're not going to help you, that's a bad sign on the coach, but not on you as well. In terms of outside of athletics, this is something that I know I personally had to deal with a lot because I wasn't good at anything until I got into football. And for 9 years, I was great at football. And after I was out of football, I was like, what the hell do I do with my life? Finding out something that you are good at, finding out something that you care about or enjoy, whether it's reading a book, getting into art, whether it's studying or reading or research, stuff like that. But being able to explore different avenues of your life and different things that you enjoy and having that as a way of pleasure in the future. Read books. Read books are great. Talk to people, build relationships, listen more versus trying to talk more. I know it's a cliche, but we do have two ears and we have one mouth for a reason. But yeah, enjoy your youth, ask questions, bug people, find books that you like to read, and then find hobbies that you enjoy as well. Find other passions in your life that aren't just with your body, but also with your mind that you can develop and have for the rest of your life because when we get older, people expect us to stop having fun, and we shouldn't have stop having fun. We should just find fun in other things.
I appreciate the conversation today. I appreciate the insight that you had. Such a fascinating field of work that you do. And I'm proud and I'm happy that we have representation in the field of work that you're doing because I think that I had no idea that something like this existed until,
Mm,
meeting you. So I appreciate you opening my eyes up to a different avenue of job or career that many young men coming up that look like us, could definitely see themselves in. Again, John Mark, I appreciate you being on Coats and Conversation.
Thank you very much, Kendrick. It was
Yeah,
an awesome conversation.
absolutely. So, for the listeners out there, if you are on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to Coats and Conversation. Leave a comment below. Let us know what was your favorite part about this episode. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, be sure to like, subscribe, send this episode to somebody that you feel that could find interest in this conversation. And I think it's fascinating learning about some of the information and jobs that some of our military personnel are going through. And if you know somebody that's in the military, share this episode with them. For those who continue to support Coats and Conversation, I want to give you a special thank you. I appreciate you tuning in to these podcast episodes and sharing them with other people. Be sure to be on the lookout for other podcast episodes coming behind or after this one.
Perfect.